Good evening and welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It's 8 p.m. Tuesday, June 14th, 2022, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens, you will see it. Queer News Tonight is supported by viewers like you. We are part of the partnership between Happening Out Television Network and Hotspots Magazine. Hotspots is celebrating 36 years of the LGBTQ plus experience. We bring you the best of LGBTQ plus news, entertainment, and support of our community.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson. Let's welcome anchor Jeff Oliverio. He is a founding member and treasurer of the Hollywood LGBTQ plus Council, a unique community civic organization designed to unite the LGBTQ plus community in Greater Hollywood. The council will be hosting the second annual My Hollywood Pride on January 22nd, 2023. Of course, you know he's also the chair of the 2022 National LGBTQ Task Force Gala being held October 22nd in Miami Beach. Good evening, Jeff.
Good evening. Happy to be here. Very excited about the gala. We're building a lot of momentum up to the event, so please check out our website for more details or come on board to be a sponsor. We'd love to have you. And so now let's welcome anchor Tony Seepersad. Tony is a concert musician, director, and artist in the South Florida area. He is currently a violinist and pianist with the Miami City Ballet and is the program director for the Seminole Theater Players at the historic Seminole Theater in Homestead, Florida. Welcome, Tony.
Hi, thank you for having me here tonight. And if I could just promote Mamma Mia. If you like ABBA, you like Broadway.
Wait, we're gay. We love Mamma Mia.
Yeah, so the 3rd and 4th weekend of July, you can get your tickets at seminoletheater.org. It's the British spelling of theater. And it'll be a great time. Come on out. Live band, great musicians, and great actors.
Sounds fun.
Let's welcome anchor Julian Cavazos. Julian is the founding executive director and CEO of Julian's Fountain of Youth, or JFOY, a 501c3 nonprofit organization serving the LGBTQ plus youth community locally. Located on the Drive in the heart of Wilton Manors, JFOY's work, programs, retreats, and youth activities are celebrating their 4-year anniversary this month. Welcome, Julian.
Thank you, Tony. And let me plug real quick. This Saturday's Gay Pride on the Drive. We're going to have a VIP party at the Wilton Collective, located at 2365 Wilton Drive. Come out, have a good time with us. So how about I welcome anchor Victor Diaz-Herman. He is a first-generation Cuban-American advocate, activist, fundraiser, and strategist. He serves as the CEO of Pride Lines, South Florida's oldest direct services agency for LGBTQ plus people. He is also the COO of Worth International Media Group, with exclusive brands such as Recommend and Preview. In the business of creating stylish, engaging, and content-rich media solutions for global travel and tourism industry for over 50 years. Good evening, Victor.
Hi, Julian. Thank you for that introduction. And I am pleased to be here and inform you all, because I know you're going to be so excited that June is actually the launch of Prideline's 40th anniversary.
40th anniversary. Wow, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
So check us out on pridelines.org to see all the great events that we have planned for this month and in the coming months to celebrate our anniversary. And with that, we are the reporters for Queer News Tonight. And this evening, we begin with Queering the Headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast. And here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Tuesday, June 14th.
We begin by queering up South Florida and Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis says, "Will not tolerate hatred towards LGBTQ." But does Florida believe him? In the past year, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has banned transgender girls from competing in school sports. He has stopped kids from being able to discuss their identity or family with Don't Say Gay. He retaliated against Disney standing up for LGBTQ+ community. His press secretary has claimed that anyone against the parental rights in education bill is a groomer. He helped foster an environment of exclusion and hatred towards the LGBTQ+ community. That's why it came as quite a shock over the weekend when he issued a proclamation for Pulse Remembrance Day that read, quote, "The state of Florida will not tolerate hatred towards the LGBTQ and Hispanic community of any kind. And together, we stand united against terrorism and hate of any kind," end quote.
Gaslight.
I'm sorry, did you say gaslighting?
Exactly, our favorite word here. I mean, beyond the attacks of the LGBTQ community, I think his lack of support for gun control also shows that he's not for protecting not just LGBTQ+ people.
Oh wait, was Pulse a gun incident?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So, let's take that out of the equation because we already know he's gaslighting the LGBTQ community, but let's just say in general, he is supporting terrorists who are able to buy guns and come in and kill people. I'm curious
to the unbelievable nature of this statement on Pulse Remembrance Day, June 12th. What's his motivation? Why would he do this?
I think because he would look like he didn't care at all about LGBTQ+ community, and he's trying to become president of the United States in 2024. So he has to show something that he's not fully hating, and it's just politics to become president.
Tony, and I agree with what you're saying. I think he's reaching out. I think he's trying to reach out and maybe get some additional votes when it comes to the elections that are going to be coming up. But I don't think there's anybody in our community that's going to believe anything that comes out of his mouth when it comes to the LGBTQ+ community. I just don't believe that's going to happen.
I don't think they will, but I think maybe on the national stage that who knows what the economy is going to be like, and it may not, LGBTQ rights may not be the first, second, or third priority in what makes somebody vote. Yep. So, just throwing it out there like, hey, I don't hate them. Look, Pulse, I took a photo out there.
And I think he needs the soundbite for when he decides to run so that they can show that he is supported. But the reality is he is as delusional as the last president and as all the people that follow him that believe that he is supported.
It's interesting, that observation, and I think it's a bullseye. So I come back to you, Jeff. You start by saying gaslighting immediately. You're the chairman of the National Dinner for the National LGBTQ Task Force. Does that attempt, do you think nationally creating a soundbite that is disingenuous can be successful for him?
I mean, I think we have to realize there are a lot of people that get their news and information in sound bites, so it can be effective, and that's why we tell these stories, to share the information that's actually the truth and what's actually happening. And I think, again, what's actually happening is he's attacking our community on a daily basis, including his staff. And obviously we reported on, the posting of calling our community groomers and all of the other attacks that are out there. And limiting drag queen story time is another attempt they're trying to do, here in Florida, which is the new popular Republican, let's ban drag queen story time because that'll solve the crisis in America. So I think we have to tell that story because the sound bites they are very effective, unfortunately. So.
Yep.
So let's queer up gay culture. Columnist issues apology after forcing Rebel Wilson to come out. A writer for the Sydney Morning Herald has apologized after he was accused of forcing Rebel Wilson to come out. Columnist Andrew Hornery had heard about Wilson's new relationship with Ramona Agorna. He emailed Wilson saying that she had 2 days to respond to his plans to write about the subject. In his article, Hornery wrote, quote, "Big mistake." Wilson opted to gazump the story. He defended himself, end quote. He defended himself saying that who a person dates is their own interest, but that Wilson had previously fed interest in her dating life when she, quote, had a hunky boyfriend on her arm. end quote. Australian news anchor Kate Doak expressed disappointment on Twitter that a gay man would attempt to out another member of the LGBTQ plus community, to which Wilson responded, quote, "Thanks for your comments. It was a very hard situation, but trying to handle it with grace," end quote. Well, I mean, I think she is trying to handle it with grace. I mean, I think these stories seem a little outdated at this point. I mean, when you're in the public eye, people are going to report on your relationship with men, women, whoever you're dating. So, I mean, I think his attempt of saying you have 2 days to respond was giving her the opportunity to do it yourself. When you get a scoop on a celebrity, you're going to get scooped. That's just the way it works. Welcome to showbiz.
I think the part of it that's kind of disgusting is that he then went on the column and then said, "I can't believe she would do something like that and take my story away from me," or gazump, whatever that means. So the fact that he was whinging about...
It's an Australian slang word for "I'm kind of stupid."
Okay. So for him to be whinging publicly like he was going to get support just seems like he's a little out of his mind. Like, what did you expect? Of course you're going to get dragged. Now your column is taken away, so, you know, karma.
I'm curious for y'all. Do you have a reaction of him challenging? Let's take away the fact that she's public figure. Your observations, crystal clear. You get what you get, and you're heard. But what do you think about a gay man basically threatening, "I'm going to give you 2 days," to the lesbian in the community? So the G challenges the L in our community. Not supportive. I'm going to push you out. What do you think about? What do you think about?
Well, you know, I always feel that when people out other people, what's behind it? And what's behind it normally is, gotcha. I'm going to let everybody know. And it's normally they're coming from a place, I believe, it's not in your best interest, but it's a way for them to say, "I got you." And for that reason, for me, normally when you out people, your come from is from a place that's not very nice.
In 2022, does it surprise any of you that it's gay on gay outing? Does that surprise any of you?
I think it's money and fame.
Mm-hmm. So it's back to the
bingo.
celebrity.
Yeah,
I don't take gossip columns as having the highest standard of.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So I mean, and I also, again, the 2-day thing. You know, if we just inserted that, you know, Victor's having an affair with somebody and we have a scoop on it, we don't have one here. But if we were to have something like someone said that you have 2 days to respond to it, it's a thing where people are putting it out there saying, "I'm giving you the opportunity," but it's a gossip columnist. This is their game.
Jeff, I'm going to slip you a note in a few minutes. I really, we'll talk.
Scoop.
Yeah, but in 2022, how many celebrities or athletes, when they come out, lose their shows, their contracts, you know, money because they're coming out as gay? It's not like it used to be.
Yeah. Well, and certainly not for Rebel Wilson. It's going to have no effect on her.
I mean, it seems like it's been a boon
It's
for
gonna-
her. I mean, so
we're
again,
all talking about Rebel.
yeah,
Right.
not been a bad story.
And now to queer up drag culture. Proud Boys members in hate crime investigation after drag queen story hour with children. Watch this.
Video posted online shows a group who investigators say may be linked to the far-right Proud Boys organization inside the San Lorenzo Public Library. The library was hosting a drag queen story hour Saturday, part of their Pride Month events, when several protesters showed up. Cindy Chadwick, the county librarian, was there.
They began insulting and otherwise verbally abusing our performer.
The performer was Panda Dolce, seen in this picture reading at an event at the San Francisco MoMA. In a series of tweets, she described what happened. She wrote they yelled and called her names, including a pedophile and an it. She said it totally freaked out all of the kids. They got right in our faces. They jeered.
It was all in front of the children, and it frightened them. I've been in libraries for over 20 years, and I've never seen anything with this kind of vitriol and hate.
Librarians called the sheriff's office. Deputies arrived and escorted the group out. The Alameda County Sheriff's Office is now investigating this incident as a hate crime. In a news release, Lieutenant Ray Kelly wrote, ACSO will dedicate all resources to ensure the safety of members of our LGBTQ community. We will make sure any future events at the library are safe against hate speech and threats of violence.
DeSantis is feeling.
After a drag queen story hour at the San Lorenzo Library in California was interrupted by a group of 5 men shouting homophobic and transphobic slurs, the Alameda County Sheriff's Office is investigating them for hate crimes. The Sheriff's Office said in a press release, quote, "A group of 5 men entered the library and disrupted the reading event. The men were described as members of the Proud Boys organization, known to be a right-wing hate group with anti-LGBTQ affiliations. The men began to shout homophobic and transphobic slurs at the event organizer. The men were described as extremely aggressive with a threatening, violent demeanor, causing people to fear for their safety. As we celebrate Pride Month, we will be swift in our response to any incidents where there are threats to harm members of this community."
Wow.
I think it's really horrible what happened, but you know, I was starting to think about what constitutes a hate crime and freedom of speech. That's kind of where my mind went with it. Of course, we all can agree that it was, you know, it's a horrible thing, but to call it a hate crime, when does it cross the line with freedom of speech is my question.
Well, I think calling the Proud Boys a hate group is underestimating that they are a terrorist organization that tried to overthrow the government. So let's call them what they actually are, a terrorist organization. So, and now they're threatening children in a library.
And their rhetoric is fueled by the same type of damaging conversations or quotes or politics that DeSantis is putting out. Those statements against the, like, for example, "Don't say gay," telling people that, calling us groomers. We have been getting, I was telling Jeff this, we've been getting at Pride Lines hate voicemails using that harmful and hateful language, calling us pedophiles, calling us groomers, calling us sickos, and far worse than that.
Wait. I haven't heard this, and I want to make sure I understand what you just said. So Pride Lines, which is an organization here, a nonprofit 501c3 here in South Florida, that is designed to provide service, counseling, mental health, et cetera, and so on, for LGBTQ young people in South Florida. You're getting hate and threat, and you're making the connection. It's because of all of the political discourse that's going on.
Absolutely. And the language that they're using is almost word for word what's coming out of the mouth of our governor or his staff, other politicians around the country.
You're executive director of Pride Lines. Has there been a focused conversation yet about how you're going to respond to the hate? Emails and phone calls or messaging, that's still threatening, and they may have the speech right to do it. But have you? Are y'all starting to formulate a plan of how you're going to respond to it, or what you're going to do about it, or evaluate? Do we have risk, or do we feel that there's danger? What's Pride Line's response to this?
Well, I mean, as a community center, our first priority is the safety of the people we serve and creating a space that's also affirming. So we're constantly having conversations and receiving, you know, hateful mail has never been, you know, it's always been part of the history and the work. But to this degree, and with the frequency and with the the language that's being used in voicemails, this is new. And so we're constantly having conversations, changing our practices, our policies, in order to make sure that our space remains safe for our young people in our community.
You know, we have a completely different environment going on because, of course, we're approaching Stonewall Pride on Saturday. I'll be broadcasting on the main stage of the parade and the lead up to the parade. But like what happened in Coeur d'Alene over the weekend in Idaho, and white supremacists come from 12 different states to cram themselves like the Keystone Cops into a U-Haul truck to disrupt the pride. And who knows how that ends up in terms of the violence. Or 5 Proud Boys to go in front of children in a public library where you can see the librarian go, "I've never seen anything like this." And then I hear what you're saying is happening at Pride Lines. Something is occurring in America that is very dangerous, and it's being caused by something. And it seems like the rhetoric that is going on is causing.
And Tony, back to what you're saying about free speech, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't, you know, free speech is that's one of the main, you know, that's American, you know. But to walk into a space and disrupt what's going on when there are children involved and scaring them by doing what they did, that's, great, there's free speech. But when you're coming into my space with the intentions of just disrupting what's happening and, quite frankly, scaring the bejesus out of these kids, no. That's when I think the whole free speech thing, no.
Well, I think what I'm referencing more is the difference between like a public disturbance and like that kind of a crime or violation as opposed to a hate crime. And I think that becomes like a pretty blurry line, just like the Supreme Court. When we have the people protesting out there, I'm sure in their perspective, this is a violent, threatening mob that's outside. So do you call that in the ballpark of hate? Or
well, I mean, I think, Al, you've used this many times on the show. If we were to insert that it was a black person reading story to children and the KKK showed up, we would say that that was a threatening, potential hate crime. Yeah. And it is the same type of format that we're facing in the LGBTQ community.
And it's interesting to that point. If it was a black church, I don't think that there would be any issue that FBI, for example, would say, no, this is a hate crime and we're investigating. The conclusion might be what you're suggesting, but they would investigate it. If this was a Jewish synagogue as opposed to a public library, there's no question the FBI would investigate this as a hate crime against religious diversity, minority of being Jewish. I think the broader issue here is what I'm suggesting, and why, Victor, what you say brings me to a complete stop. We're watching a situation that we watched in Coeur d'Alene. We're watching political leaders that are not, their speech is to demean and demoralize. The claim of groomers is a dog whistle. They're blowing a dog whistle. It's the same thing that we're watching over the January 6th Capitol hearings of, did the President of the United States blow a dog whistle to create radical individuals from to attack the Capitol? That is still to be decided, but we see parallels here. And now I hear even in our own local community, you're starting to experience that. Before something dangerous really happens, I think that there should be lots of conversation about, we're watching a new phenomenon and trying to figure out exactly what is happening. And I believe our next story actually really discusses that.
Up next, Queer Up Politics.
I'm going to help you here, Julian, because of a little problem with the teleprompter.
Okay. There is despair in LGBTQ plus community as the Nebraska city rescinds the Fairness Ordinance. Watch this story.
The win is where we successfully bring this into reality. Having a goal of anything short of that is about hitting a milestone and not about long-lasting change and protection for the LGBTQ plus community in the next generation. We will win this when we have the ability and resources to counteract the lies and scare tactics from those whose actions intentionally or unintentionally create lifelong harm. I remember growing up gay and being afraid to tell anyone, and being even more afraid that I was going to spend an eternity in hell because of how I was born. I used to pray to God to undo my birth, because not even being born seemed like the best outcome in comparison to what the messages and narrative was all around me about what my destiny was going to be. Pain, torture, and suffering without end. I received these messages by adults, leaders, and the community around me, not by my own relationship with God. I was lucky. I grew older. I was able to create a life of love, acceptance, and family. I made it. I barely made it, but I was one of the lucky ones. I made it, but there's many of us who do not, and there are many of us who still will not, that will struggle with the lies and scare tactics around them. There are many of us who will not make it. If we do not have the resources or ability to fight these lies and scare tactics very similar to what we grew up with, then we add to the creation of lifelong harm, either intentionally or unintentionally. We won't be reckless. We will continue to push forward equality while shielding our community from ongoing attacks on freedom. We will tell the transgender, non-binary community that their voices matter. The LGBT community, our city, and this council will not give up the fight towards full equality. This is just a next step till that one beautiful day when these protections become codified in law and when all LGBTQ plus adults and kids see this world as equally theirs.
The city of Lincoln, Nebraska no longer has a Fairness Act in their city code after a city council meeting. The council had passed the ordinance 5-0 in February, but some of the council members felt that it would not hold up in the ballots. Sandra Washington, who introduced the bill, said, quote, "The journey toward the promise was never guaranteed to be easy or short or convenient. To the upcoming generations, to the youth of our city, I want you to know I see you. I have been where you stand now, and I promise you it will get better." Council member Tom Beckus and James Michael Bowers, who are both openly gay, both voted to rescind the ordinance because they did not feel that its supporters were prepared to win at the ballot box.
Wow.
This was a really complicated story for me to wrap my head around. I had to read it 3 times to understand what was going on, because it seems like the gay people, the LGBT people, were the ones that had control over whether this was put on the ballot, and they decided to take it off, in addition to a couple other people. And it seemed as if there was a death of a transgendered person, somebody who took their own life, and they felt like because I guess the conservatives named that bill the transgender bathroom bill, that was creating undue stress. Just like you were saying, something is going on, that the attacks are ramping up on transgendered people. So I think their intent was to take it off the ballot to cool things off, because they didn't think it was going to pass anyways, but to find the right timing for it.
I think your summary is exactly accurate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's interesting to me. First, we're sitting here in Florida. We don't frequently talk about Nebraska at Queer News Tonight. But in terms of context, if Miami in Florida, in Nebraska, that is Omaha. Then there is Tampa in Florida, and that is Lincoln. Mm-hmm. This is a major metropolitan city by Nebraska standards. It's Tampa for Nebraska. The idea that there will not be a fairness ordinance in a major metropolitan American city, we understand, rural Alabama, but this is a major metropolitan city. That's first. And then second, that members of the city commission that are gay feeling like we can't do this because of the backlash that will take place and the possible defeat at the ballot to support the LGBTQ community is equally shocking. Because what they're saying is, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa voters, you're not going to support the LGBTQ community, and so therefore we're not going to put it in front of you because we don't want to suffer the defeat. Very sad to be gay in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah, it was
very sad.
That last quote where she promises it'll get better. There was definitely a time when that was believable and in a path that we were on where that was true. And it just seems like we're in a time right now where there's a level of uncertainty behind it'll get better. And I have to wonder what the people that are listening to their local politicians tell them that are really thinking, and whether or not they're believing.
And our gay politicians in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah.
We've mentioned this many times, and I think that our own community a lot of these things are falling on deaf ears. To hear that we have an LGBTQ political leader in Lincoln, Nebraska, and the reason why we need more voices like that in all levels of government is very apparent. And this person telling that powerful story, first of all, kudos. Thank you for sharing your story. It was very moving, and that is a story that probably many of us here or have friends or family can all share that same story, and we need to have more leaders like that.
One of the council members had also mentioned that fairness should already be included in the 2020 Supreme Court decision, so that they were saying that maybe it's not even necessary to have this because those protections still exist. But who knows if they're just pandering to be reelected or however that works out.
And one clarity, we've had much argument at Queer News tonight. We at It's Happening Out had a log cabin Republican, a prominent log cabin Republican, and that was their argument against the Equality Act. It's not necessary because the 1960s Act did the exact same thing. It repeatedly has been explained that it does not protect you in the way that the Equality Act was. So when they make that suggestion, they really are stalling the idea that we want to provide the kind of equality protections that are really clearly needed. And that's exactly what's going on in Lincoln, Nebraska. That's why the Equality Act is required and necessary. There's no chance of it passing, but that's why it's required. It's so unfortunate, yeah.
And now let's queer up trans rights. A new poll finds most Americans oppose trans athletes in female sports. A recent poll by the Washington Post and the University of Maryland shows that the majority of Americans do not support transgender athletes competing in women's sports. The poll shows that 55% are opposed to transgender women competing in high school sports, and 58% are opposed to allowing it at the college or professional level. Only about 30% of Americans support allowing transgender women to compete in women's sports. Last week, Louisiana became one of 17 states to ban transgender girls or women from competing on female sports teams.
This problem just seems to keep coming back and coming back in this story. I find that, again, asking the question to most Americans who don't understand anything about transgender people is just setting up these polls for not for success. And second of all, this is not a problem. There are no problems with, the amount of transgender people in sports is de minimis.
Other thoughts?
Go ahead.
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Okay. I think back to 1976, Dr. Renee Richards, the first female, trans female tennis player. And I look at her rankings and how she did. And she didn't go out there and conquer the women's tour, did she? No, she didn't. I also think back to Martina Navratilova on the tour and what people said about her, and that she was a manly woman, and that, but she worked her butt off for where she got. And then I also look at what they had to say about this exact subject matter. And they took an interesting stand and felt that it is unfair. As a professional tennis player, even Dr. Renee Richards said, yes, there is a difference, and that is something that we need to look at. Now, they didn't say they shouldn't be playing. They just said it's something we need to spend a little bit more time on. And maybe that's what we need to do, and not just shut them all out. I don't think that's the way to go.
I think the latest research that I was reading was if you have gone through puberty already, that your bone density, your lung capacity, your I forget a few of the other metrics that they use.
Cardio.
Yeah, plus a larger frame. Generally, men are taller, or a biological male's body, that they do give these advantages. And although I feel terrible for somebody, a transgendered person who wants to be in sports and play as their gender, I think there is mental damage that can happen for them not being able to. I don't know how to square that with the professional sports world, which is a billions of dollar industry, and how to make it fair. And we've already created biological women's sports divisions because women weren't able to compete at the same level as men. So I don't know if without a revolution like how we do in boxing, where we just size people up by height, weight class, to do that with team sports, I don't know how to square it, even though 99% probably of people playing high school sports never make it into the professional world. So there are benefits for that to happen. I don't know if the answer is transgender leagues or open leagues where anybody, male, female, could be part of it.
I think that to kind of push back on one of the comments you made, I don't know that women's leagues were created because they couldn't compete against men. I think in the heteronormative world that we live in, there is a very binary understanding of gender, and that's male and female, and so women weren't able to compete against men because they were lesser than or not as strong or whatever baloney, was brought up at that time. But to your point, I agree with you. I don't know much about sports ball. I don't know the rules. I don't know the categories.
You are not gonna, gay.
I'm not going to pretend that I do. But I do know that in several sports, you can't compete outside of your class. So your body weight, your muscle mass, and I don't understand if we just take the gender out of it and we look at the person's, physical ability and compare them and put them in teams or leagues with equal people, regardless of their genders, why we can't move on and get past this point. This is ridiculous.
I think there's a couple of reasons why, and a couple of things that I think are important. Trying to live in this story in just the facts. First, the AMA and the International Olympic Committee completely have resolved this issue. The American Medical Association, every branch of medical representation in America says this is not an issue. There is no reason why trans cannot compete in women's sports. It does not give unfair advantage. They've made a decision. The medical science has made a decision, including the International Olympic Committee. That is a fact. But I think that there is a second fact going on, which I hear in your observation. America's not ready. We're just not ready yet. And while we don't like it, or I think a preponderance of LGBTQ community doesn't like it, it's still a fact. America is not ready for it. But that is not necessarily a bad thing, because when I saw this new poll result, it was not surprising to me, but I look at it as a challenge, because 15 years ago, this was a similar number against gay men. Mm-hmm. It was a similar number against gay marriage. And what is required when people are uncomfortable and they're not ready is to continue to talk about it. And while we may not get it today, and while we may not get trans rights and trans in women's sports today, we eventually will, because we'll talk about it and talk about it. And the people that are uncomfortable will meet more and more trans people, and they will go, wait, they're not the boogeymen that Fox News and Tucker Carlson sold us. And they will begin to change. But that takes time. And so we should forgive, potentially, some ignorance because they don't know any better, and give ourselves more time to help get them there. And we've proven, all of the people sitting at this table have proven you won, because they felt the exact same way about us 20 years ago. And we've won. And that's exactly what will happen in trans. We just have to be a little more patient to get there.
I wonder if that would be the sentiment if what we were being told was that queer men couldn't participate in sports anymore. Because I feel like there's a divide in our community, and the entire queer community doesn't necessarily identify or understand with the trans experience or struggle.
And that's a whole different conversation. You wonder if there was a secret poll in the LGBTQ community.
It's not so secret. I've seen it on Facebook of our own community posting about this topic.
It doesn't make it right for sure, but we're just not ready.
But if it were,
we can be. And remember, once upon a time, our sexual identity was illegal. We couldn't sleep with each other. I mean, come on. Today, even the most crazy of the crazy don't suggest that. It takes time to push people to come out of their ignorance. And that's what we're watching in the trans community.
That's what we're seeing in Florida.
Yeah,
laws roll back and they do impact us.
Next, we report on our partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. We are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine and supporting that partnership. Happening Out Television Network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ+ religious live broadcast in the world, as more than 30,000 watch every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Watch this.
I'm Gabe Salazar, Artistic Director of the Gay Men's Chorus of South Florida, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Girl.
Well, we're sitting here talking. We're going to finish tonight's Queer News headlines with a segment we call LGBTQ plus Flash News.
LGBTQ plus Flash News. New RuPaul's Drag Race International All-Stars is official. Watch this.
The world is your runway. We're excited to announce that Canada's Drag Race, Canada versus the World, is coming this year.
We're looking for the next global drag superstar. The new series, Canada's Drag Race, Canada versus the World, is coming.
Who will be the next queen of the mother-pucking world? The new series, Canada's Drag Race, Canada versus the World, is coming this year to Crave.
It appears that RuPaul has created a monster. As the Ruverse expands to more and more countries, one of her creations is set to supplant her. Mama Ru recently hosted the wildly popular RuPaul's Drag Race UK vs. the World, and Canadian streaming service Crave celebrated Pride Month by announcing Canada's Drag Race, Canada vs. the World. RuPaul won't be the host of this show, however. Instead, it will be the wildly popular rising star Brooke Lynn Heights. Will Heights be the next RuPaul? Will Canada become a drag world power? We'll have to tune in to find out. I believe, as they say in Canada, amen.
I look forward to 7 days a week, 4 weeks a month, and 12 months a year of RuPaul's programming. Bring it, mama.
It makes my head spin with excitement. I am so into this.
That's not where I thought you were going. You know, Canada, I just have to be the no-sayer. No, you ain't got a chance.
Oh, the shade.
I'm going to second that opinion.
Oh,
Yeah, all right.
got two. Oh, hurt my heart.
All right, Tony, we're going to do another flash news.
All right, so another LGBTQ plus Flash News. Vice President Harris and husband make historic Pride appearance with RuPaul's winner Symone. Watch this.
We will continue to build unity. We will continue to build coalition. We will always be fueled by knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. We will be fueled by saying no one should be made to fight alone. We will be fueled by knowing we are all in this together.
This weekend, Washington, D.C. residents celebrated Capitol Pride. On Sunday, the stage is joined by Vice President Kamala Harris and the second gentleman. Also appearing with them on stage was RuPaul's Drag Race Season 13 winner, Symone. Harris made mention of the Pulse massacre during her speech, which happened on the 6th anniversary of the event. On stage, she said no one should fear, quote, no one should fear going to a nightclub for fear that a terrorist might try to take them down. No one should fear going to a Pride celebration because of a white supremacist. No one should fear loving who they love. Our children in Texas and Florida should not fear who they are. Black and brown and women of color, transgender women should not fear for their lives, end quote. I think it's fantastic. I don't think as much clashing and conflict that's happening now in our country. I think that it's amazing to see in the White House for the first time these huge messages coming from these highly influential people.
First of all, I love Symone, but I find it is inspiring, but it's also sad that we have to reference so many negative things and honor so many victims at a Pride event. So I appreciate the message, but sad.
I love seeing our vice president on stage and sharing such powerful words. I want to see her in local state capitals doing the same thing and fighting the hateful legislation that we're seeing around the country.
Amen.
She is a class act. I just, when she speaks, I listen. I just love her.
I'm a little confused because I know this was in Washington, D.C., but she referenced Florida and Texas. Mm-hmm. And if our governor in Florida and the governor in Texas get their way, Kamala can't do Drag Queen Story Hour with Symone. I'm a little confused. All right, in LGBTQ Flash News, this is amazing. This is like an all RuPaul's Drag Race set tonight, by the way.
I'm here for it.
Fox's Laura Ingraham slams RuPaul's new Drag Race queen, a drag race queen, Nancy Pelosi. The most recent episode of RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars featured a special performance and appearance from a different kind of queen, the originator of the shade clap herself. Nancy Pelosi appeared on the show and encouraged the queens and viewers to get out and vote. Well, Fox News commentator Laura Ingraham tried very hard to attack Pelosi for the appearance, but the jokes, as usual, fell completely flat. Watch this.
And I saw this RuPaul show, and I have to say that the makeup on some of the drag performers I thought was actually pretty convincing. And it's so convincing, they're now even impersonating political figures, Raymond.
Please give a warm drag race welcome to the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi.
No,
That
Laura,
looked like
that was
Pelosi.
actually Pelosi herself. That is
What?
Pelosi.
It was
because if you're
not.
trying to reach voters, Laura, before the
No.
midterms, where
that
else would
she?
you go but RuPaul's Drag Race?
Now, Speaker Pelosi, with all the challenges facing our nation, what words of wisdom do you have for us?
Well, the single most important thing I can say is to vote. With the midterm elections coming up, it's very important for people to make their voices and their vote heard.
We throw the word master class around here all the time, but that sarcastic, shady clap you do was epic.
It was completely unintentional. Can I get an amen?
I think they should have done this, Raymond. Remember when after Trump did the State of the Union and she
Yes.
did this? Remember that?
Yes,
that
I
was
do.
her.
Well,
that
that's
was
what they were
her
referring
classic
to.
move. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, this may be a backup career for Nancy Pelosi, a judge on RuPaul's Drag Race, and, you know, she'll hang up the gavel, but this is the future. And look, she does know her
Gotta
way
go.
around the paints and throwing shade, so
Raymond,
she's ready.
I can't. That wasn't Pelosi. All right. Thank you.
And the drag queen playing Laura Ingraham tonight is Sharon Needles.
I think it's great. It's the same message that she says on her show, too. Get out and vote. Nancy never said anything about who to vote for. So that's your message, Laura.
It was absolutely the most engaging 30 seconds of Fox News I've ever watched by getting to see RuPaul's Drag Race shown. Thank you, Laura Ingraham.
Laura Ingraham.
It was a joke that fell flat, but oh my God, Nancy Pelosi as a judge on a RuPaul's Drag Race?
Yeah.
I'm living.
Get a gavel.
I'm here for it.
I'm having a tough time with this because I have nothing nice to say, and my mother always said, when you have nothing nice to say, keep your mouth shut.
Oh, you couldn't be on Laura Ingraham then.
I'm going to just close it right there.
And we're going to do another flash news. Julian?
Okay. Flash news. Germans soccer director demands FIFA explain anti-LGBTQ plus Qatar hosting World Cup. Can we play the story?
No. We're going to talk about it first.
Okay. Since it was announced that the 2022 FIFA World Cup will be hosted by Qatar, there has been backlash from many due to the country's treatment of the LGBTQ plus community. Same-sex relations can be punished by up to 7 years in prison, and under Sharia law, gay men can be put to death. Oliver Bierhoff, a former soccer player and national team director at the German Football Federation, recently spoke out against the selection of the country as a host. In an interview with Funk, he said, I quote, "What award criteria for a World Cup does FIFA actually apply? Because awarding a tournament is the sharpest sword to push for the necessary change. This has happened before the award and not after. Otherwise, you have no leverage to enforce it. The award criteria must be closely linked to human rights issues," end quote. Thank you, Oliver. Thank you for speaking up.
You know, my mother said to my sister frequently, you can't give away the milk for free. And I thought about the exact same thing here.
She should have been saying that to you.
Oh, we'll talk later. In awarding the FIFA World Cup to Qatar.
I don't think it's a great idea. It's interesting, though, with the Olympics and with all these other worldwide events. What are these criteria? Do they publish it? Shouldn't we know what that is?
I mean, we may start losing sports events here in South Florida based upon the policies we're putting forth by the governor. But I will say, I do think that there is some positive things that can happen out of this by putting focus on those issues and the country being kind of forced to push the issue. So I do believe that there could be some positive momentum there.
I just say, FIFA, do better. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to continue.
And now we have another LGBTQ plus flash news. Burger King apologizes for Tops, Bottoms Pride Whopper campaign. Last week, Queer News Tonight reported on a new Burger King ad in Austria that celebrated Pride. The ad showed a new Pride Whopper. The sandwich appeared to be just a regular Whopper, but with either 2 top or 2 bottom buns. Most of gay Twitter was confused by the ad, thinking that the buns represented gay sex. Apparently, straight Twitter understood that the buns represented gender and not sex, but the message clearly missed the mark with the intended audience. The marketing agency that created the campaign, Jung von Matt Danau, has apologized. They stated on LinkedIn, quote, "The intended message of the Pride Whopper was to spread equal love and equal rights. Our strongest concern is if we offended members of the LGBTQ community with this campaign. If this is the case, we truly apologize." 2 tops and 2 bottoms. When I saw it, I thought it was hilarious. But also somebody doesn't get how that works.
You know what? I say to Burger King, thank you for spreading equal love and thank you for spreading equal rights.
For me, the most interesting thing was not the confusion of the top bread or the bottom bread, but Jeff Oliverio's confusion of, wait, are we talking about a Whopper?
I just wondered who was in the room in their marketing meeting, and I heard that they're
no longer in that room, by the way.
They considered influencers instead of actual marketing people, so maybe you should do a little better on that.
Yeah.
I got to cover this fabulous story last week, but to the marketing agency at Burger King, here's a great idea. How about Burger Queen for next year?
I thought Julian was going to tell us that you were happy they spread their buns.
There are so many jokes. We got to end Queer News Tonight.
Well, that is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only LGBTQ plus evening news show. Is our community important to you?
Then help us by liking and subscribing. Ring the bell for updates. Share this news with your friends and family.
Post this broadcast in the many groups you are a member of. Tonight's stories about our community deserve the attention of your family and friends.
And I'm going to borrow this. Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
We told you we were unedited live. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. This is the only place in the world that tells these LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. And that is the passion of the Happening Out Television Network and Queer News Tonight. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Tony Seepersad, first time here at Queer News. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Jeff Oliverio, Julian Cavazos, also first time here at Queer News Tonight anchoring, and you did a great job. And then there's Victor Diaz-Herman.
That's,
whatever. All right, whatever. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. Good night. LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the